On an ordinary Wednesday morning, the sun cast a warm golden hue over Maplewood Park, where the familiar sounds of laughter and playful chatter filled the air. Thomas Mitchell, a 75-year-old Vietnam War veteran, made his way through the park, his weathered face etched with the lines of time and experience. He loved this park. It was a sanctuary where he could reflect on his past and enjoy the simple pleasures of life. As he walked, memories of his service flooded his mind, of camaraderie, sacrifice, and the weight of choices made long ago. Today, he wore a simple navy blue cap with the words Vietnam Veteran embroidered across the front, a symbol of pride that often sparked conversations with fellow parkgoers. The park was bustling with families enjoying picnics, joggers weaving through the paths, and children playing tag near the swings. Thomas often found solace on a weathered wooden bench, a favorite spot under an old oak tree where he could watch the world go by. As he settled onto the bench, he pulled out a paperback novel, the pages slightly crinkled from years of love. He immersed himself in the story, occasionally looking up to soak in the vibrant scene around him, feeling the deep sense of contentment wash over him. But today, that peace was about to be shattered. As Thomas turned a page, he noticed a group of young men nearby. They were loud and boisterous, their laughter ringing out as they tossed a frisbee back and forth. At first, he didn't think much of them. After all, they were just enjoying a day off, perhaps from work or school. However, their playful energy quickly morphed into something darker. One of the men, a tall figure with a cocky demeanor, caught sight of Thomas and shouted, "Hey, old man, you still fighting the war in your head?" The others laughed, and a chill ran down Thomas's spine. He glanced around, hoping someone would intervene or that the young men would simply move on. But the mockery continued. "What's it like to lose a war?" Another shouted, the words dripping with contempt. Thomas clenched his jaw, feeling the anger rise within him. He had faced enemies on the battlefield, but this kind of harassment felt insidious. An attack on his character, his service, and his very existence. Yet, he fought against the urge to retaliate. After all, he was a veteran who had learned to pick his battles. Responding might escalate the situation further, and the last thing he wanted was a confrontation in the park, a place he cherished so much. As the group's taunts grew louder, he stood up, hoping to walk away and diffuse the tension. "You boys should watch your mouths," he said, his voice steady but low. The words barely registered over their laughter, and one of the young men stepped closer, a sneer on his face. "What are you going to do about it? Write us a letter?" He jeered. The others erupted into laughter again, each laugh striking like a blow to Thomas's chest. He could feel his heart pounding, a mix of shame and anger swelling inside him. Just then, a familiar sound reached his ears, the rumble of motorcycles in the distance. It was a sound that had always brought him comfort, a reminder of the brotherhood he once shared in the service. And now, it filled him with a sense of hope. Thomas had made some friends over the years, bikers who had welcomed him into their fold, appreciating his stories and his spirit. He reached for his phone, contemplating whether to call them. He hesitated, wondering if he was overreacting. But the laughter continued, and he felt the heat rise in his cheeks. With a deep breath, he dialed his friend Mike, the president of the local biker club. "Mike, I could use some backup," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "I'm at Maplewood Park, and things are getting out of hand." Mike's voice came through loud and clear, filled with concern. "We're on our way, Tom. Hang tight." The line went dead, but Thomas felt a surge of reassurance. He would not face this alone. As he hung up, the group noticed his conversation. "Oh, look, the old man's calling for help," one of them mocked, and they closed in, sensing weakness. Thomas stood his ground, his heart racing. He wouldn't back down. He was a veteran, and he had faced far worse in his life. The tension thickened in the air, a palpable mix of fear and anticipation. Just as the taunts intensified, the roar of engines grew louder. Thomas's spirits lifted as he spotted a line of motorcycles approaching, glistening in the sunlight, each one a symbol of loyalty and strength. The bikers rolled into the park, their presence instantly commanding attention. Mike, a burly figure with tattoos that told stories of their own, led the group. As they parked and dismounted, the young men exchanged uncertain glances, the bravado fading from their faces. Thomas felt a rush of gratitude as his friends approached him. "You okay, Tom?" Mike asked, scanning the scene with a steely gaze. Thomas nodded, feeling the weight of the moment. "Just some disrespectful kids," he replied, his voice steady. But the bikers were not here for mere conversation. They were ready to defend their own. The lead biker, a no-nonsense woman named Lisa, stepped forward, her presence exuding authority. "You boys need to show some respect," she said, her tone brokering no argument. The young men shifted uncomfortably, realizing they were no longer in control of the situation. The confrontation that followed would be the catalyst for change, not just for Thomas but for the entire community. As the tension escalated, Thomas realized that the choices made today would resonate beyond this moment, stirring ripples of courage, camaraderie, and community spirit that would forever alter the lives of everyone involved. In a world where silence often reigned, today, voices would rise. The atmosphere in Maplewood Park crackled with tension as the bikers stood firmly beside Thomas, their imposing figures a stark contrast to the group of young men who had been taunting him just moments before. The arrival of Mike and the rest of the bikers shifted the dynamics entirely. What had been an intimidating situation for Thomas transformed into a united front against disrespect and bullying. Lisa stepped forward, her leather jacket gleaming in the sunlight, a fierce protector ready to defend one of her own. "You think you can just come here and bully people? This isn't a playground for your nonsense," she said, her voice steady and authoritative. The leader of the young men, a tall guy with an undercut and a cocky smirk, attempted to assert dominance despite the visible unease among his friends. "What's it to you? We're just having a little fun," he sneered, trying to maintain his bravado. Lisa crossed her arms and narrowed her eyes, refusing to be intimidated. "You call this fun? Harassing an old man who served this country? That's pathetic." The tension reached a breaking point as the young men exchanged nervous glances, their laughter now replaced with uncertainty. Thomas stood taller, feeling a swell of pride and camaraderie. He wasn't alone anymore. As the bikers moved closer, the group of young men began to retreat, their confidence eroding under the weight of the bikers' presence. "Let's just go, man," one of them muttered, glancing at his friends, who were clearly less eager to engage in a confrontation. The leader hesitated, a flicker of doubt crossing his face as he looked back at Thomas. "You think you're tough because you've got your friends. You're nothing but an old man who's lost his edge." Thomas felt a rush of anger, but tempered it with resolve. "You don't know the half of it," he replied, his voice steady. "I faced far worse than petty insults, and I won't let you or anyone else think you can walk all over me or others." Just then, the leader, desperate to reclaim some semblance of control, pulled out his phone and began recording. "Look, everyone, we got a little biker gang trying to play hero," he shouted, tauntingly. The young men laughed, attempting to regain some of the bravado they had lost. However, the laughter didn't last long. "What's it going to be, boys?" Lisa challenged, stepping forward, her piercing gaze locking onto the leader. "You can walk away now, or we can settle this like real men." The atmosphere was thick with tension as everyone waited for a reaction. The young men exchanged uncertain glances, the bravado draining from their faces. As the leader hesitated, unsure of how to respond, Thomas saw an opportunity. "I fought for this country," he said, his voice carrying a weight of experience and authority. "I put my life on the line for freedom and respect. You think this is just a game? You're wrong." His words hung in the air, resonating with both the bikers and the young men. For a moment, The park felt eerily silent as everyone absorbed the gravity of what Thomas had just said. The leader looked at Thomas, and for the first time, Thomas saw doubt flicker in his eyes. With that, the bikers moved in closer, forming a protective circle around Thomas, creating a barrier between him and the group of young men. Lisa raised her chin defiantly. "You want to film something. How about you film yourselves backing down?" The leader's bravado was cracking, the reality of the situation dawning on him. The bikers were not just a group of rough riders. They were a community, fiercely loyal to one another and ready to stand against injustice. The park, once a scene of harassment, transformed back into a safe haven. The families resumed their picnics, and children returned to their games, oblivious to the turmoil that had just unfolded. But for Thomas and the bikers, the day had changed forever. They had faced down not just a group of disrespectful youths, but a moment that could have spiraled into something far worse. As the bikers gathered around, they shared stories and laughter, the earlier tension dissipating into camaraderie. Mike pulled out a thermos filled with coffee and poured cups for everyone. "How about a toast to old friends and new beginnings?" he suggested, raising his cup high. The group cheered, their spirits lifted, each sip warming their hearts. Thomas looked around at his friends, feeling grateful for their presence and the unexpected bond that had formed in the wake of adversity. The experience had been harrowing, yet it reinforced the importance of standing up against bullying and the power of community. He realized that the confrontation wasn't just about him. It was about everyone who had ever felt marginalized or bullied. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over Maplewood Park, Thomas made a silent vow. He would use this experience to inspire others, to advocate for veterans and those who felt powerless. The event had sparked something within him, a desire to turn his own trials into a voice for change. "This isn't over," he thought, determination setting in. "This is just the beginning." Little did he know, the ripples of this day would soon extend beyond the park, touching the hearts of many in ways he could not yet foresee. The park, once a scene of harassment, transformed back into a safe haven. The families resumed their picnics, and children returned to their games, oblivious to the turmoil that had just unfolded. But for Thomas and the bikers, the day had changed forever. They had faced down not just a group of disrespectful youths, but a moment that could have spiraled into something far worse. As the bikers gathered around, they shared stories and laughter, the earlier tension dissipating into camaraderie. Mike pulled out a thermos filled with coffee and poured cups for everyone. "How about a toast to old friends and new beginnings?" he suggested, raising his cup high. The group cheered, their spirits lifted, each sip warming their hearts. Thomas looked around at his friends, feeling grateful for their presence and the unexpected bond that had formed in the wake of adversity. The experience had been harrowing, yet it reinforced the importance of standing up against bullying and the power of community. He realized that the confrontation wasn't just about him. It was about everyone who had ever felt marginalized or bullied. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over Maplewood Park, Thomas made a silent vow. He would use this experience to inspire others, to advocate for veterans and those who felt powerless. The event had sparked something within him, a desire to turn his own trials into a voice for change. "This isn't over," he thought, determination setting in. "This is just the beginning." Little did he know, the ripples of this day would soon extend beyond the park, touching the hearts of many in ways he could not yet foresee. The days that followed the confrontation in Maplewood Park felt like a whirlwind for Thomas. The event had reverberated throughout the community, stirring conversations and drawing attention to issues that many had preferred to ignore. He had never intended to become a local symbol for standing up against bullying, yet here he was, thrust into a role he never sought but felt compelled to embrace. Each morning, as he read the local paper, he was met with stories of the incident, some sensationalized, others focused on the larger implications of what had happened. It seemed everyone had an opinion. And for Thomas, The weight of that attention was both a source of pride and a catalyst for anxiety. One afternoon, Thomas found himself at the local diner, a small establishment where the townsfolk gathered for coffee and conversation. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the air as he took a seat at the counter, his favorite spot where he could watch the world go by. As he sipped his coffee, he overheard snippets of conversation about him. "Did you hear about that veteran? He really stood up for himself," one woman remarked. "I can't believe those boys thought they could get away with that," replied a man seated nearby. Though he appreciated the support, it made him uncomfortable. He was just an ordinary guy, not some heroic figure. He tried to brush it off, but the realization that he had unintentionally sparked a movement began to settle in. As he pondered these thoughts, the door swung open, and Mike strode in, his leather jacket catching the light. "Hey, Tom," he called out, waving. "Got a minute?" "Always for you, Mike," Thomas replied, gesturing for him to join. Mike slid onto the stool beside him, his expression serious. "I've been thinking. We need to do something about this. It's not just about you. It's about everyone who's ever felt bullied or disrespected." Thomas nodded, understanding where this was going. "What did you have in mind?" Mike leaned in, his voice low but charged with energy. "A community meeting. We invite everyone, the bikers, veterans, even those kids who harassed you. Let's create a space for dialogue. We can share stories, address the issue of bullying, and hopefully educate some folks about respect." The idea was ambitious, and part of Thomas hesitated. Would the young men come? What if they didn't take it seriously? Yet, as he looked into Mike's earnest eyes, he felt that same surge of determination he had experienced in the park. "You're right. We can't just let this fizzle out. Let's do it." The decision made, they began planning the meeting, coordinating with local businesses and community leaders to spread the word. As the days turned into weeks, anticipation built around the event. Flyers were posted, and social media buzzed with talk about the upcoming gathering. People were curious to see what would unfold, but Thomas felt a mix of excitement and anxiety. What if no one showed up? What if the young men arrived and only mocked the whole situation again? But deep down, he knew he had to push through those fears. The community needed to address these issues head-on. The night of the meeting arrived, and the community center was buzzing with activity. Chairs were set up in a large circle, fostering an environment of openness. The walls were adorned with photographs from local events, a testament to the town's spirit and resilience. As Thomas entered, he was greeted by familiar faces, friends, neighbors, and even a few new ones. The atmosphere was charged with anticipation. Mike stood at the front, ready to lead the discussion. "Thanks for coming, everyone. This is a big step for our community," he began, glancing at Thomas, who felt a wave of gratitude for his friend's unwavering support. "We all witnessed what happened in the park, and it's time we talk about respect, bullying, and how we can support each other." As the evening progressed, stories were shared, some heartwarming, others heart-wrenching. People recounted their experiences with bullying, whether it was in school, at work, or within their families. Thomas listened intently, his heart heavy with empathy for those who had suffered. One young woman spoke about being bullied for her appearance, while an older gentleman recounted being belittled for his age. Each story echoed the importance of respect and understanding. As the conversation flowed, Thomas decided it was his turn to speak. He stood, feeling the weight of the moment, and addressed the crowd. "I want to thank all of you for being here. What happened to me wasn't just about me. It's about all of us. We can't let bullying take root in our community. It's our job to stand up for one another." His voice quivered with emotion as he recounted his experience in the park, not just as a victim, but as a veteran who had fought for a society built on respect and honor. At that moment, he saw the young men who had harassed him at the back of the room. They stood together, faces tense and uncertain. Thomas felt a mix of emotions, anger, disappointment, but also a flicker of hope. This was their chance to engage, to learn. I invite those who were involved that day to come forward and share your side," Thomas said, his voice steady. "We're here to listen, not to judge." Silence fell over the room, the air thick with anticipation. The young leader, the same one who had taunted him, shifted nervously. After a moment, he stepped forward, visibly uncomfortable, but willing to speak. "Look, we were just messing around. We didn't think it would escalate like that," he admitted, his voice wavering. "We thought we were being funny." A murmur of disbelief swept through the audience. Thomas felt the anger rising again, but he reminded himself of the purpose of the meeting. "There's nothing funny about hurting someone else," he replied, trying to keep his tone even. "You might not have seen it then, but your words matter. They can break someone down." The young man nodded, a flicker of understanding crossing his face. "I get that now." "I'm sorry," he said, his voice genuine. The room fell silent again, the weight of his apology hanging in the air. It was a pivotal moment, not just for him, but for everyone present. Encouraged by the honesty of the moment, others began to chime in, sharing their experiences and lessons learned. Thomas realized that the discussion was transforming into a healing process for everyone involved. They were not just addressing the past, they were forging a path toward a more respectful future. As the meeting wound down, Thomas felt a renewed sense of hope. The community was coming together, willing to face uncomfortable truths and learn from them. It was not just about standing up against bullying. It was about building a community where everyone felt valued and respected. As people began to leave, many approached Thomas, thanking him for his bravery and openness. The young men lingered at the back, their demeanor noticeably changed. One of them, the one who had initially mocked Thomas, approached him, his eyes earnest. "I'm really sorry for how we acted. We'll do better, I promise," he said, extending his hand. Thomas accepted the handshake, feeling a sense of closure wash over him. As he watched the crowd disperse, a wave of realization washed over him. This was the transformation he had hoped for, not just within himself, but for the entire community. They had faced adversity and emerged stronger, united by their shared commitment to respect and understanding. That night, as Thomas lay in bed, he felt a profound sense of accomplishment. The events in the park had sparked a fire in him, igniting a passion to advocate for those who felt voiceless. Little did he know that this meeting would be the first of many, paving the way for a new era of community engagement and support. The road ahead would undoubtedly have its challenges, but for the first time in a long while, Thomas felt hopeful. The future was bright, and together, they would navigate whatever lay ahead. The following weeks after the community meeting were transformative for Maplewood. The discussion surrounding respect, bullying, and support for one another permeated every corner of the town, sparking initiatives and conversations that seemed long overdue. Thomas found himself at the heart of this movement, often invited to speak at local schools and community events. It was surreal to go from being the target of harassment to becoming a beacon of resilience and courage. On a sunny Saturday morning, Thomas stood at the front of Maplewood High School's auditorium. Addressing a room full of students, he had been invited to talk about his experiences, not just as a veteran, but as a member of the community who had faced adversity. The room was filled with a mix of anticipation and skepticism. He could see some students checking their phones, their eyes glazed over, while others leaned in, curious to hear what he had to say. "Thank you all for being here today," he began, feeling the familiar flutter of nerves in his stomach. "I want to share a story about standing up against bullying, not just for myself, but for everyone who feels marginalized or disrespected." As he spoke, he recounted the events from the park, describing the harassment he faced, the phone call to his biker friends, and the transformative community meeting that followed. He emphasized the power of words and the responsibility that came with them. "Each of you has the ability to uplift or tear down. It's a choice you make every day," he said, his voice steady. "And it's important to remember that no one deserves to be bullied, no matter the reason. We all have our battles, and sometimes the strongest thing you can do is to stand up for someone else. He watched as the students exchanged glances, some nodding in agreement. His words seemed to resonate, breaking through the barriers of youthful indifference. After he finished, a few students approached him, eager to engage in conversation. "That was really powerful," one girl said, her eyes bright with sincerity. "I never thought about how my words could impact someone so much." As the days passed, Thomas continued to receive invitations, each speaking engagement fueling his passion for advocacy. He felt a responsibility to share his story, to inspire change, and to foster an environment where respect was paramount. However, he also sensed an underlying tension. The young men who had harassed him had been noticeably absent from community events since the meeting. Thomas had hoped for reconciliation, for them to participate in discussions about respect and change, but instead, their silence loomed like a dark cloud. One afternoon, Thomas met with Mike at their usual diner, the familiar scent of coffee and breakfast food surrounding them. "Have you seen those kids lately?" Mike asked, leaning in. "I haven't heard a peep from them since the meeting." Thomas nodded, concern creasing his forehead. "Yeah, it's troubling. I was hoping they'd engage more with the community, that we could turn this around together." Just then, the bell above the diner's door jingled, and in walked the young men who had harassed Thomas that day. They looked different, more subdued, their usual bravado stripped away. The leader, the same one who had recorded the confrontation, caught Thomas's eye and immediately looked down, a flash of shame crossing his face. Thomas felt a mixture of anger and empathy. He knew that everyone deserved a chance to change, but how would they respond? As they approached the counter, one of the young men awkwardly cleared his throat. "Hey, can we talk to you?" he asked, his voice uncharacteristically meek. Thomas exchanged a glance with Mike, who nodded encouragingly. "Sure," Thomas replied, gesturing for them to sit down. The atmosphere was thick with tension as the young men took their seats. The leader spoke first, his gaze fixed on the table. "We wanted to apologize for how we treated you in the park. It was stupid and wrong," he said, his voice lacking the bravado it once had. "I guess we didn't realize how hurtful our words could be until we saw the fallout." "Yeah," another young man chimed in. "We've been talking about it a lot. I think we just thought we were being funny, but we weren't. We really messed up." The sincerity in their voices surprised Thomas. This was the moment he had hoped for, a chance for understanding and growth. "I appreciate you coming here to say that," he replied, his voice calm. "It takes courage to own up to your mistakes, and I respect that." The leader looked up, a hint of vulnerability in his eyes. "We've been hearing more about the community meetings and everything that's been happening since the park incident. It's made us realize how much we need to change." Thomas felt a spark of hope ignite within him. "Change is always possible," he said. "It starts with acknowledging what happened and deciding to do better." They spent the next hour talking, sharing stories and experiences that had shaped their lives. The young men opened up about their own struggles, pressures from peers, issues at home, and the need to fit in. Thomas listened intently, realizing that their journey to understanding was just beginning. "You can make a difference, not just for yourselves but for others too," he encouraged. "Use your voices to stand against bullying instead of contributing to it." As they wrapped up the conversation, Thomas extended an invitation. "We have a community meeting next week. I'd like you to come, share your story, and be a part of the dialogue. It could help others see that change is possible." The young men exchanged glances, their expressions a mix of uncertainty and hope. Finally, the leader nodded, a small smile breaking through. "Yeah, we like that. We want to make things right." The encounter marked a pivotal moment in Thomas's advocacy journey. He felt a renewed sense of purpose, understanding that healing often requires vulnerability and openness from all sides. The following week, as the community meeting approached, He found himself reflecting on the power of forgiveness and the importance of creating a safe space for everyone to share their experiences. When the night of the meeting arrived, the energy in the community center was electric. Thomas stood at the front, surrounded by familiar faces and some new ones, including the young men who had harassed him. They sat together, the visual representation of the change that was possible when people chose to confront their mistakes head-on. The air buzzed with anticipation as people settled into their seats, eager to engage in meaningful dialogue. Mike opened the meeting, introducing Thomas and the young men, highlighting their journey toward reconciliation. "Tonight, we're here to talk about respect, understanding, and how we can build a community where everyone feels safe and valued," he said, his voice steady. As Thomas took the floor, he felt a surge of determination. "Thank you for being here," he began, looking out at the crowd. What happened in the park was a turning point for all of us. It reminded us that we can't ignore the impact of our words and actions. We have to hold ourselves accountable, but we also need to forgive and support one another in our journeys of growth. The young men then shared their stories, discussing the lessons they had learned since that day in the park. They spoke openly about their insecurities, the pressures of fitting in, and how they had realized the importance of treating others with respect. The audience listened intently, and Thomas could see the shift in attitudes. People were beginning to understand that change was not just possible, it was necessary. As the meeting continued, Thomas facilitated discussions, encouraging everyone to share their thoughts and experiences. The room buzzed with energy, filled with stories of resilience and hope. It was a powerful reminder of the strength that comes from community and the willingness to embrace change. As the evening drew to a close, Thomas felt a sense of fulfillment wash over him. The young men had taken a brave step, and the community was rallying around them, ready to support their journey. The meeting had not only sparked conversations, but had also created a culture of understanding and compassion. As people began to leave, Thomas lingered for a moment, reflecting on the impact of the night. The journey ahead would undoubtedly have its challenges, but he felt confident that together they could create a community that valued respect and unity. With renewed hope and determination, Thomas knew that they were not just addressing bullying. They were building a legacy of resilience and understanding that would echo for generations to come. As the weeks turned into months, the ripple effects of the community meetings continued to unfold throughout Maplewood. The atmosphere in town had shifted. Conversations about respect and bullying became common, threading their way into everyday interactions. Thomas found himself busier than ever, frequently invited to speak at schools, community centers, and local organizations. Each time he shared his story, he witnessed the profound impact it had on others, inspiring them to think about their own actions and the way they treated those around them. The young men who had once harassed him transformed as well. They attended each meeting, becoming regular participants in discussions about bullying and respect. Their presence offered a powerful testament to change, showing others that even those who had erred could learn, grow, and ultimately contribute positively to the community. It was not just about redemption for them. It was about preventing future incidents, becoming advocates for kindness, and standing against the culture of bullying that had once defined their behavior. One evening, as Thomas prepared for another community meeting, he received a call from Mike. "Hey, Tom. We need to talk," Mike said, urgency lacing his tone. "There's been a lot of chatter lately about starting a community program focused on respect and anti-bullying initiatives, and I think we could lead the charge." Thomas felt a spark of excitement ignite within him. "Absolutely. What do you have in mind?" Over the next few days, they brainstormed ideas and rallied support from various local organizations, schools, and businesses. Their goal was to create a comprehensive program that would not only educate the youth about the effects of bullying, but also foster an environment of empathy and understanding among all community members. They planned workshops, seminars, and even community events designed to bring people together, creating connections and encouraging open dialogue. As the program began to take shape, the group organized a large community event at the town square, inviting residents to participate in a day filled with activities, discussions, and guest speakers. Flyers decorated with bright colors were distributed throughout the town, announcing the Maplewood Unity Day, a celebration of respect and kindness. When the day finally arrived, Thomas felt a wave of anticipation as he looked around the bustling square, filled with families and friends enjoying the sunny afternoon. Booths were set up, each offering different activities, from art projects emphasizing kindness to discussions on emotional well-being. The air was electric with laughter, chatter, and the occasional burst of music from a local band performing on the stage. Thomas moved from booth to booth, greeting familiar faces and meeting new ones. The event had drawn a diverse crowd, demonstrating the community's willingness to come together for a common cause. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the square, it was time for the main event, a panel discussion featuring Thomas, Mike, and the young men who had harassed him. As they took their seats on stage, Thomas felt a mix of pride and nerves. The young men, now advocates for kindness, looked determined to share their journey with the audience. Mike introduced them, highlighting their transformation and the importance of open dialogue. Tonight, we're not just here to talk about what happened in the past. We're here to celebrate growth, understanding, and the power of community, he said, his voice filled with passion. The panel began, and Thomas listened intently as the young men spoke about their experiences, discussing the challenges they faced and the lessons they had learned. One of them, the leader of the group, shared a particularly poignant moment. I realized that I wasn't just bullying someone else. I was trying to mask my own insecurities, he admitted, his voice steady but filled with emotion. It took me a long time to understand that I was hurting not just Thomas but myself and everyone around me. The audience sat in rapt attention, some nodding in agreement, while others appeared deep in thought. As the discussion progressed, Thomas felt a sense of accomplishment wash over him. They were breaking down walls, fostering understanding, and encouraging others to reflect on their own actions. After the panel, Thomas opened the floor for questions, encouraging audience participation. Hands shot up, and he called on a young girl sitting near the front. "What do we do if we see someone being bullied?" she asked, her voice clear and confident. "That's a great question," Thomas replied, grateful for her courage. "If you see someone being bullied, it's important to stand up for them. You can either intervene if you feel safe doing so, or you can report it to an adult or someone who can help. But the most important thing is to show that person they're not alone and that you care." More questions followed, each one reflecting the audience's desire to understand and contribute positively to their community. As the event came to a close, Thomas felt a profound sense of gratitude. They had started a movement in Maplewood, a movement focused on respect, understanding, and the courage to stand up against bullying. In the days that followed, the Unity Day event sparked new initiatives. Schools began incorporating anti-bullying programs into their curricula, teaching students about empathy and the importance of standing together against disrespect. Local businesses displayed signs promoting kindness, and community members organized regular meetups to discuss ways to continue fostering a culture of support. Thomas became a frequent guest speaker at schools, sharing his story and encouraging students to embrace kindness. Each time he spoke, he could see the impact his words had on young faces, eyes wide with understanding, nodding heads signaling agreement. He felt empowered, not just by the transformation of the young men, but by the community's willingness to embrace change and learn from their experiences. However, amid the positive changes, Thomas often found himself reflecting on the young men who had harassed him. Despite their newfound commitment to change, he wondered if they were genuinely learning or simply following the tide of community expectations. One evening, he decided to invite them over for coffee, wanting to have a candid conversation about their journey. When they arrived, the atmosphere was a mix of nervousness and anticipation. Thomas offered them coffee, and as they settled in, he looked at them directly. I want you to know that I appreciate the work you're doing now, but I also want to talk about what you truly feel. Are you really committed to this change, or is it just something you think you should do?" The young leader hesitated before responding. "Honestly, it's a little of both. I want to do better, but sometimes I feel lost about how to keep going. We've changed, but I worry about falling back into old habits." Thomas nodded, understanding the struggle all too well. Change isn't easy. It's a process, and it takes time. But it's important to stay connected to that feeling of wanting to do better. Surround yourselves with positive influences, and don't be afraid to reach out for help when you need it. Their conversation deepened, each young man sharing their insecurities and fears about maintaining their commitment to change. Thomas listened, offering encouragement and guidance, reinforcing that it was okay to stumble as long as they remained focused on their journey. As they parted that evening, Thomas felt a renewed sense of hope. The young men were not just on a path of redemption. They were genuinely trying to build a better future for themselves and the community. He realized that healing took time, and that every step forward, no matter how small, was a victory worth celebrating. In the months that followed, the community flourished. Thomas witnessed firsthand how respect and kindness became ingrained in the town's culture. The relationships forged through shared experiences began to grow stronger, uniting people from diverse backgrounds and encouraging a spirit of empathy. Maplewood was becoming a model for other towns, showcasing the power of community, connection, and the ability to change for the better. Reflecting on the journey, Thomas felt a sense of fulfillment he had never expected. From being a target of harassment to becoming an advocate for change, he had transformed not only his life, but the lives of many around him. The impact of one incident had evolved into a movement, one that emphasized the importance of standing up for one another and fostering a culture of respect. And as he continued to share his story, Thomas was reminded that every voice mattered, and every story had the power to inspire change. With each interaction, he became more convinced that kindness could create a legacy, one that would echo through generations, leaving an indelible mark on the community of Maplewood. As spring blossomed in Maplewood, the community continued to flourish under the principles of respect and kindness that had taken root in the aftermath of the confrontation at the park. The Unity Day event had sparked a movement, creating a culture where people actively engaged in discussions about bullying and the importance of support. Thomas, now a central figure in this transformation, found himself busier than ever, juggling speaking engagements, community events, and advocacy efforts. Yet he felt a profound sense of purpose guiding him through the chaos. One evening, as Thomas sat on his porch sipping tea, he noticed the vibrant flowers blooming in his garden, a symbol of growth and renewal. He reflected on how much had changed since that fateful day in the park, feeling grateful for the connections he had forged and the impact they had made. However, beneath the surface of this progress lay a sense of unease. The issues of bullying and disrespect were complex, and he knew the journey toward genuine change was far from over. Just then, Mike called, his voice bursting with enthusiasm. "Tom, you won't believe this. A school district from a neighboring town reached out, asking if we could share our program. They've heard about our Unity Day and want to implement something similar." Thomas felt a surge of excitement. "That's amazing, Mike. It's incredible to see our message spreading. We have to take this opportunity to reach even more people." As they discussed plans for the upcoming presentation, Thomas's thoughts drifted to the young men who had harassed him. They had continued to attend community meetings, showing genuine commitment to their personal growth and engaging with others about their journey. But Thomas wondered if their transformation would withstand the pressures of their peers and society. He resolved to invite them along for this new venture, believing that their stories could resonate with others facing similar challenges. The following week, they prepared for the presentation at the neighboring school district, and Thomas gathered the young men, now part of the Respect Champions, a title they embraced with pride. "This is a big opportunity for all of us," he said, excitement bubbling in his voice. "We're not just sharing our stories. We're showing that change is possible, and we can all be advocates for kindness." The young men nodded, their expressions a mix of determination and nervousness. They were ready, but doubts lingered in their minds. On the day of the presentation, the school auditorium was filled with students, teachers, and parents. As Thomas took the stage, he felt the familiar rush of adrenaline. He began by recounting his own experiences, emphasizing the importance of standing up against bullying. "It's not just about what happened to me. It's about the choices we make every day and how they impact those around us," he said, capturing the audience's attention. Next, he invited the young men to share their stories. One by one, they spoke openly about their past actions, the insecurities that had driven them to bully others, and the lessons they had learned through their journey of change. The audience listened in rapt silence, and Thomas could see the impact of their words as students exchanged glances, contemplating their own behavior. As the presentation continued, they opened the floor for questions, and a hand shot up from the back. "What if someone is too scared to stand up?" a girl asked, her voice shaky. Thomas looked at her, understanding the weight of her question. "That's a tough situation," he replied thoughtfully. "But there's strength in numbers. If you can't stand up alone, find someone you trust. Speak to an adult, a teacher, or even a friend. It's important to remember that you don't have to face it alone." The discussion flowed organically, with students expressing their concerns, sharing experiences, and offering solutions. By the end of the presentation, it was clear that the message had resonated deeply with the audience. As they wrapped up, Thomas felt a swell of pride for the young men, who had transformed from harassers into advocates, embodying the very change they spoke about. After the presentation, students approached the young men, thanking them for their honesty and courage. It was a powerful moment of connection, demonstrating the profound impact of vulnerability. As Thomas watched, he felt a sense of hope for the future. They were breaking down barriers and building bridges where there had once been walls. Returning home that evening, Thomas reflected on the day's events. The journey had been fraught with challenges, yet every moment spent advocating for change felt worthwhile. He knew there would always be struggles ahead. Bullying and disrespect wouldn't vanish overnight. However, the seeds of kindness had been planted, and he was committed to nurturing them. In the following weeks, the Respect Champions became regulars at schools, continuing to share their stories and experiences. Thomas also started a mentorship program, connecting high school students with younger peers, creating a support system where they could foster friendships built on respect and understanding. The program quickly gained traction, and students from different backgrounds began to come together, forming a community where kindness thrived. However, not all responses were positive. Some parents and community members were skeptical of the young men's transformation, concerned that their past actions could undermine the message they were trying to promote. Thomas knew this skepticism was part of the journey. Change is a process, he would tell anyone who questioned the young men's commitment. It takes time, but it's possible, and it starts with having the courage to acknowledge past mistakes. One afternoon, during a mentorship session at the local school, Thomas was approached by a concerned parent. "I'm not sure I'm comfortable with my child being mentored by someone who was once a bully," she said, her arms crossed defensively. Thomas listened patiently, sensing her fears. "I understand your concern," he replied, "but every one of us has made mistakes. The young men you're worried about have worked hard to change, and they're here to support others. They're living proof that redemption is possible." The mother paused, considering his words. "I guess I never thought about it that way," she admitted, her posture relaxing slightly. "Maybe it's good for my child to see that people can change." Thomas smiled, feeling grateful for the opportunity to engage in this dialogue. That's exactly it. We're all capable of growth, and it's important to foster an environment where we can learn from one another. As spring turned to summer, the Respect Champions continued to make strides. They organized events at the park, bringing families together for activities that promoted kindness and respect. The events became a beloved staple in the community, a reminder of their shared commitment to fostering a culture of empathy. One day, while setting up for a community picnic in the park, Thomas noticed a familiar figure lingering at the edge of the event. It was the leader of the young men who had once harassed him, standing alone with a contemplative expression. Thomas approached him, sensing a mixture of unease and determination in his demeanor. "Hey, everything okay?" Thomas asked, concern evident in his voice. "I've been thinking," the young man began, his voice low. "I want to do more. I know I've made mistakes, but I feel like I can help make a difference now." Thomas felt a surge of pride. That's the spirit. We can always use more voices advocating for change. What do you have in mind? With a spark of enthusiasm in his eyes, the young man began sharing his ideas. He wanted to create a youth council focused on bullying prevention, a platform where students could voice their concerns, share experiences, and propose initiatives for their peers. "I want to help others before they get to where I was," he said, determination filling his words. "That's a brilliant idea," Thomas exclaimed, excitement bubbling up inside him. "Let's work together to make it happen. We can organize meetings and get students involved. This could be a game changer." The two spent the afternoon brainstorming ideas and planning how to roll out the youth council. As they finalized the details, Thomas felt a sense of fulfillment wash over him. Here was a young man who had transformed not only himself, but also his aspirations, eager to help others and create a lasting impact. In the weeks that followed, the youth council took shape, and interest in it surged among students eager to share their experiences and brainstorm solutions. The council became a safe space where students could express their concerns, connect with one another, and take an active role in shaping the culture of respect within their school. As summer unfolded, Thomas looked back at the journey they had taken together, from that harrowing day in the park to the vibrant community they had built. The change in Maplewood was tangible. The culture of respect and kindness permeated every corner, leading to meaningful connections among its residents. One warm evening, the community gathered at the park for a celebration to honor the progress they had made. Families spread blankets on the grass. Children played games, and laughter echoed through the air. As Thomas stood at the front of the gathering, he felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. The journey had not been easy, but it had been worth every moment. He addressed the crowd, his heart swelling with pride. "Thank you all for being here tonight. This celebration is a testament to the incredible power of community. We've faced challenges, but we've also seen the beauty of growth and change. Let's continue to support one another and embrace the values of kindness and respect. Together, we can create a brighter future for everyone in Maplewood." As he spoke, he glanced over at the young men, now advocates and mentors, standing proudly among their peers. They had transformed from harassers into leaders, embodying the spirit of change they had all worked so hard to achieve. Thomas knew that this journey would continue, and he felt a deep sense of purpose guiding him forward. The evening drew to a close,